Hi, so this is another Comfy video. I thought I would do a video on how I actually make an illustration using Comfy but other tools as well, and how I actually start an illustration. So on this one I'm starting in Photoshop, and I want to basically sketch out my blocks, and I sort of want a sort of futuristic tank, which I sort of want coming over the hill. So I'll sketch in just the rough outlines. Our tracks there. We'll start with a fairly standard tank, and we'll futurize it later. The main thing I want is it to sort of come up over the brow of our hill. Now you can do a super work this up to a really fairly exact image. I find that's really not worth doing, because the way AI works makes that a bit irrelevant, really, because it'll ignore all that lovely detail you put in and just do something else there. Okay, so that's our tank coming over the hill. And we're going to have sort of futuristic clutter here. Not quite sure what we're going to have here. And the gun will be sort of slightly more than a normal. Okay, so that's pretty good. So what I'll do is put a layer underneath that, fill it with grey, and then we can light it. So if I go to the white, I can get a beginnings of how our scene might be lit, which is pretty good. And then we do the same for the dark. We won't go completely black. We'll go down here somewhere, which is also fine. And we'll go behind that, put in some sort of sky tone. And this is very much the way I would have always started a concept illustration, really. And then I shall, and my next thing is to generalise that a little bit, so we can have a bit of shadow for us. I'm dealing with big compositional. Okay, that all looks pretty good, and then I'll tidy everything up a little bit. So I'll pale all this off, and then I can zoom in a bit and start to decide some of this, which might be a bit boring. I'm not sure how much of this I'll record, because this is the bit takes a little bit longer. But with this, we have to get it to clearly say tank, otherwise it won't work. And then we need to think, how big is our tank? Well, we could have it huge. It could be big enough. ComfyUI, the AI will have trouble understanding that, so we might have to think of another method of getting there. And we get a bit of perspective into this. AIs are pretty good at picking up on perspective-y things. Okay, that's fine, I think. We'll bring this back a bit, hide that, and then all this lot here can go, and we can now maybe blur that a little bit, start making some tones. Seem to have neglected to put the gun in, but we can do that. And then we can pop our darks back in. We'll do them a little bit more carefully this time. It's very easy to get lured into making too much of this stage. I've quite often done quite elaborate workings at this stage, and then found that they were completely irrelevant to the end result. And I think we're not very far away. That looks quite interesting. So we'll flatten that, and we'll add a little bit of colour. I do that very crudely. So I'll have a warm, and another one, duplicate the layer, go down lightness, make it cool, and then I'll invert that one. And then with a soft brush, I can really roughly mark in the warms and the cools. It won't be this colour, this is just to indicate. And then I think we have to, we might make a new layer here, put in some indication of sky. A bit of a sky there. And we also need a gun to make our gun fire, which should be enough. Okay, so we'll flatten that Set the saturation down, quick levels adjust, and there we have our base image. Doesn't look much, does it? There you go. Where I've put my scrappy drawing in. I'm using IP adapter, so we've put in this sort of stuff. So there's a tank firing, there's machinery, and there's a big tank drawing, roughly the angle. And I've done an absolutely very simple prompt, which you can read there. And the result is this, which is pretty good. It's understood our prompt. The tank is a bit ordinary, not particularly futuristic, but we've got everything pretty much where we want it. We haven't really quite got the angle on the tank. I'm not too worried about that really. I've had some other ideas from this. So what I want to do now is to take this image off and maybe I'll do some more images with stronger influences on the IP adapter, and I'll do maybe 8 or 9 generations here at this point, and then we'll go back into Photoshop and reassemble the bits we've made in something that's nearer aligned and more interesting. So the first thing to do is to play with the adapter and get a bit of variety in there. So here we are back in Photoshop again, and we've done quite a few generations, some of which are nice, some of which aren't. But they've all got interesting aspects to them. I particularly like that tank is I rather like. So I'm going for this one as my base. So I like the projectile and the rest of that. So we'll set that as our base, and we'll float off our tank, and we'll see if we can get the fire. That's not bad. That'll do. So that's the tank, and then we look back at the other ones and see what other stuff we like. Not sure I want an extra tank. I quite like that tank, so I'm going to have that tank and see if we can steal bits of it. And so we'll pop that tank in here. The great thing with this is that they'll all vaguely fit. Maybe we'll have that behind that tank. And I think I want our original tank with a double gun. Okay, so that's looking quite nice. And we'll get rid of... Okay, so that's a slightly more funky tank. We might join our two tanks together now. And that's looking good. We've got triple guns. I like triple guns, that's fantastic. So that's getting somewhere. I don't like this stuff here, so we can get rid of that. That's better. I don't want a bloke there, so we'll clone him out. And you can be fairly broad with this. I do this quite quickly. Okay, so that's all quite fun. A few things I want to lose. Okay, and now we can flatten that. I'm great for flattening things. I don't like this very much. So we've now got a monster triple thing tank. And we might join all of these together. I think that's all fine. Now we do need some figures, so let's go and look for some figures elsewhere. It's quite a nice little chap. Have him. And the great thing is that all these pieces will all fit. So now we can give our tank some real scale. Let's see what else. Figure-wise we might have him as well. Okay, so we've got one seriously big tank there, haven't we? And the next thing I'll do, I might go looking for some machinery type detail. So let's throw this in there. So you've got some great looking equipment there we can strap onto our tank. Get rid of the bits we don't need. We might have a bit of that on the other side as well to mirror. That looks good. So now our tank is getting to be quite a brute. And I quite like this bit of rubbish. We'll have some more of that. So now our tank is getting quite monstrous. We're a little bit tidy up here. Okay, that's pretty good, and I think we'll flatten that, and then we'll think about lighting. A bit more drama on the lighting. So we have we're getting a much better result. So a few things. This guy needs a head, and now I want to do a little bit more. We'll put a hue saturation in, and we'll colorize, and we want quite warm. And we'll duplicate this, make this one cool. Get a bit of random lighting in there. It doesn't have to be very, that's pretty good. And then we percentage these in. And I'll put a final level on top of that. Okay, so there's our next feeder image, which will go back into Comfy. So here we are back in Comfy with an entirely different workflow. And here's our image loaded in. And it's going to be put through a lighting. So we're going to alter the lighting. And we need to make this image here, if we can zoom into that, we make this image here less certain. Because I want to see if I can provoke it into some madness. So run that prompt and that will make a depth map. So we're making the depth map from the original image here. There's our depth map, which looks pretty good. I like the depth map, look at that. And then we're going to light it. There's another video on using this, so I'm not going to go into again. But basically, what I can do is I can paint my lights and darks in to re-emphasize the lighting we have here. So we open it in Mask Editor, and this is very broad brush. And I think I want shadow across the foreground, get some shadow in there as well. And I think that'll do. So we save that to the node, and then we want it sort of a little bit backlit, I think. So here's where we painted our lights. So we got some light there for our guns maybe, and I think we got a bit of light down this side as well. Looks good. And we can have a look at how that's coming along. That's quite nice. And then I think we have some really bright where our flashes of gunfire are. And I think that's probably all we want of that. And this is the image we've got. So we've got a choice of this image and this image. I think that's gone too dark. So that's all probably a bit too dark. So we can come back here and that's looking more like it. Okay. So we'll give that a go. I might use either of these. I think they both give different results. And I might actually mix them back. Now I've rewritten my prompt. We'll have a quick look at that. So the prompt's fairly basic. And we've got an experimental futuristic-y LoRa in there, which might be too much. It's a bit strong. And then this thing here does, and I think I might use Mechanarian again, or Mechanicus. Mechanicus is a little bit steampunky. That might be too much on the LoRas, but we'll see. We'll run a first go. We have the control net running, and we're ready for liftoff. So here we are back in Photoshop, and this is the pattern I often follow when making an image, is that I bounce to and fro. So we've got two generations here, and I'm going to put one on top of the other. And as you see, they're done with two different lightings. The great thing with this is I can, of course, let's make that into a layer, paint the two together. And because they're from the same prompt, essentially, they'll paint together beautifully. So I'm just painting light in there. Although I quite like that, I think I prefer that background. The other background is a bit too insistent, so I don't like that. So we'll flatten that. I think that's pretty good. Next, now the strange thing about figures, I've got to get rid of the strange thing along the tracks there, but I can do that by selecting our tank and scaling it a bit, and there we go. Not too hard. I don't like this here, and this is way AI is just so easy, isn't it? Things I don't like. Why is he just standing there? Is he stupid? And I want to keep this dark under here, I think. Not sure about those little lights, they can go. Okay, so we got all that done, that all looks nice. And I do a fair bit of just tonal tweaking. So that's all quite good, quite like that. I think my tank's too much the same colour, so what we'll do is put a hue saturation in there, move the colour elsewhere, and have a little bit of variety in the colour. I'm not sure that's the right colour. That's pretty good. So I think we're quite happy there. We might swing the colour of our tank a little bit to the red. That's pretty good. The final thing is, I mean, they're all just standing there, aren't they? So what we'll do is to bring a few people running away in. So we'll have, I think we want him running away rather than just standing there. He looks better. I don't like him. I'm not sure I like him much. And we have to get rid of this chap here, I'm afraid. So they're gone. I think we've got a few other runner awayers here, which are all pretty good. And as a final, I think this chap here can be fleeing from over there. And there we've got a little bit happening. We've got this guy here who's a bit stupid. He's just standing and looking at it, but we can make him a bit smaller. Okay, so that's, I think, ready to be taken to the next stage. So we'll flatten that off, and we want to put in some shadows for these guys. And I think we're fine on that. So that is ready to be refined and go back into Comfy for the next stage. So here's our next stage, and what we'll do, we want to turn this lot off. We don't need any of this lot now. That's all done its work. And we're down to refining now. We have a few prompt changes. So I think we want to say something about, should we say running away? And this is going to upscale 1.5. We might have 45 denoise, lower the CFG a bit. Other than that, I think we're ready to go. So we'll cue prompt. So here we are with that generation, and we're looking pretty good now. I like all this lot. This is only the first refine. We'll do another refine in a moment, but it's looking pretty good. The soldiers aren't very convincing, but I quite like the fact there's lots of them now. So what I will do is try and refine my soldiers, because they're almost right, but not quite what I want yet. So what I'll do is I'm going to chop this bit out and just refine the soldiers, which will mean changing the prompt and so forth. So we're off to Photoshop again to chop out our soldiers. Here we are back in Photoshop yet again. And we have our ingredients. I like to think of them as ingredients because just making an image and letting the model imagine it isn't really image making, is it? Image making is sort of having an intention and carrying it through. Anyway, so we've got various arrangements of guns, and I think this is the one I like most. Our soldiers aren't running away, of course. So I'm going to use this one as my base. So this is what I'm going to build on top of. And what I go and do is to look at bits I prefer in other ones. So I quite like the tracks on this one. So what I can do is lift out the tank, go to the one I like, and then I can drop that back in. And the great thing with AI, of course, is it will always fit. There we go. Yeah, I prefer those. It's like slightly slicker, isn't it? I've got to sort out this line here. Is not great, but I think we can do that. And now I need to look at anything else I want from this one or this one. I think this lot is better here, so we'll have that, which will go in there nicely. And as you see, things fit in completely invisibly. You can just pick the bits you like. So soldiers. I think we can close these ones. Is that gun better? No, it's about the same. Quite like the top of that one, but I don't like the. It's only the very top I want of that one. I think that looks nice. Yeah, that's better. I have to correct this line here, which I think can be done as simply as that, which is quite nice. All of which is good. And so we can close these two now, and we need to think about soldiers. The soldiers are rubbish. They're not running away. So I made this, which is a cutout, and then I refined it like so. And this one is lovely, and it should fit. Famous last words, we'll see. So there we go. We need to make this fit in. So what I do when I'm doing this is I put a mask here, and I then, with the brush, can paint out the stuff I don't want and paint it back in again if I need to. So inevitably you have to do a little bit of fine work, and we start to get our figure's looking pretty good. And I think that's enough for those, really. So they look great. Very much better. We have a little bit of tiling up here, but not too bad. A little bit of cloning. Get rid of the last of the excess soldiers. And there we have our fleeing soldiers. What could be nicer? Okay, so I think this is pretty much ready to refine now. So we'll flatten that. We've got a few tonal adjustments. And I think that's ready for the final upscale. Now the final upscale is done with the tiled upscaler. So we will probably get hallucinations. We'll get extra soldiers and this and that. So this isn't our last visit to Photoshop. There's a few little things I will do to have that interior a little bit better, and maybe a few little hints of a see-through the tracks there. I think that all looks good. So we'll save that as our final load and put it through the upscaler. So here we are on the upscale. As you see, I'm disabling the groups behind me as I go along. So now only, we're at the end, there's nothing more over here. So I've loaded my image in, and with an upscale, if I had all the stuff about soldiers and so on, I would get hallucinations absolutely everywhere. So I need to come up with a prompt that describes this image and what you might find in it. So if I say from here, if I go Fute and War and Machinery, because it won't ever see all of the tank. So if I put tank, it'll try and find tanks everywhere. And I can put soldiers in down here, but way down the bottom. And that is probably enough. So for a tiled upscale, you want the barest description. So you often remove, as I've done here, remove your subject entirely. If I put tank in, every one of these bits here would become a tank. So I don't want that. So I keep the prompt as vague as possible. And the general rule is that if this is tiled into, I don't know how many, and you need something in the prompt for every tile. So these ones will just get futuristic city. They'll be fine. The soldiers will be tricky because we're gonna get a few soldiers scattered around, I would think. But I will do 2 upscales, one at a lower denoise, and then I should be able to merge the 2 together into one without any hallucinations. Famous last words. We'll run that and we'll see once again if we get lucky. And this is the large refiner, the McBoty, and it'll divide this into 9 tiles and refine and upscale at the same time. So here we are in Photoshop for the last time, I hope. And these are our upscales. And rather annoyingly, it did the upscales just about completely perfectly. I wanted to show how I fixed them, and but they're pretty much okay. So I did one at denoise 45 and one at 25. So you can see the difference. The 45 one, the details are all just a little bit nicer, but we have a few nasties. The bottom of the tracks has been had a redesign, but the figures are great. I mean, they're running into attack now rather than running away, but I don't think I mind that too much. There are almost no nasties. All this is great. Got a head there, that couldn't go, but we are pretty much perfect, which is slightly annoying, but never mind. So what we do, I can fix the tracks. So what you do, you get your denoise 25 or 0.25 and you drop it over the top of your and then put a mask over it, invert it, and then you just paint in. So I can just paint in the better track, and I can paint that head out. I'm very short of things to do here. No. The great thing with a layer mask like this is you can paint stuff in and paint it out again. There's one correction to do over here. We've got a nasty edge to this track, if you see that. But I can't really see anything else I want to do. It all looks absolutely fine. So we'll flatten that on. All the men are great. Very pleased. Okay, so we'll flatten that on, and then we'll just tidy this track up. And essentially we just need to draw a slightly more rational track line And I think that is about it. I would perhaps, we're got slightly an irrational track there, so I'll darken that to set the track back. So the track could be coming out from behind, but I think that is pretty much done. Rather too many of these red lights, don't mind a couple. Okay, so we'll flatten that, and then we look at a final levels adjustment over the top, because we tend to lose a bit of contrast. So we lose a bit of punch, and there we have our final image. I hope that was interesting and give you some idea of the process of making a really finished specific image. And the few things to take away from it I would suggest are don't get too hung up on your original concept and try and make it exact, because if you do that, you're not making use of AI. Essentially, I didn't conceive of all this clutter and stuff around here, but if we go back to where we started, so here's where we started and here's where we ended up in a matter of an hour and 10 minutes. So I think that's pretty scary. I think that's where we ended. I'll put a set of steps at the end, which will fade through. There won't be a workflow because the workflows are too broken up, and so there's not one single workflow. It's a combination of quite a few workflows, but it shows you, I hope, the how you can make an image and use all the tools available. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.